chair, fellow speakers, our guests. It's that time that if you like gardening, you might be starting to think about planting your seeds. This time last year, I had the great idea of planting Brussels sprout seeds. I got really overexcited about seeing those big green Brussels sprouts and I thought, I want to grow my own for Christmas dinner. My husband was horrified. He hates Brussels sprouts with a passion, but I was really committed to this project of growing Brussels sprouts. So I put my seeds in the tray, they grew into little plants, and when it got warm enough I planted them out into my raised beds. And then I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and spring came and went, and summer came and went, and the plants got a little bit taller, but it took to the end of autumn before I started to see teeny tiny little Brussels sprouts forming on the stem. Can't tell you how excited I was about that. So, we all know patience is a virtue, and that's never more true than when you're growing Brussels sprouts. Oh, Brian! So patience is a virtue, that's never more true than when you're growing Brussels sprouts, and with gardening in general, because nurturing something takes time. It's also not very convenient for us. Modern gardening, modern food, is force-grown. Seeds are forced in simulated environments. Plants are forced to grow with chemicals. And what matters most in modern life is output. Before the Industrial Revolution, we lived a life alongside nature. We got up with the sun. We went to bed with the sun as well. And life was a lot slower. Modern life, now everything is faster. We have food quickly, cars quickly, we eat quickly, everything is around speed, 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 everything is optimised. You'd think with all of the shortcuts that we have, we'd have plenty of time for going on holiday, sipping cocktails, lounging around penning F2 speeches. But no, in that gap, we just fill the time being busy with more and more work. But Brussels sprouts don't rush. They take time. They need day after day after day of sun and rain to grow good and strong and healthy and nutritious. Nature and gardening need time to be healthy. None of it can be rushed. It reminds me a little bit of photography. Do you remember the days where you'd get your photography film and you'd pop it in your camera, and sometimes it would stay in your camera for months, because when you only have 24 or 36 frames, each one of those frames is considered. We take our time to take those pictures. And even developing, I wanted to show you this because this film has been waiting to be developed for 20 years. I'm in no rush, it's fine. But getting those photos back, there was something just more powerful about them, because we'd taken our time to take the picture and we'd taken our time to get them developed, and then we'd taken the time to send them off, get them back, open them and realise they were all out of focus. When I was about 14, I spent many, many happy hours in a school darkroom, and I remember being in the room, pitch black, just with the red light on, and the smell of chemicals, and somehow feeling cocooned in that warmth. It felt like a really safe space. And I'd get my film, and I'd take it, and I'd roll it onto the spool, and then in the dark, I'd hold it up high so that it didn't touch anything, and very, very carefully, I'd roll it all onto the spool until I popped it in the pot to be developed. But that wasn't the most magical part of the process. Getting the photo paper that I'd exposed and slipping it into the chemicals and very slowly rocking the tray until the ghost of an image emerged was absolutely magical. And from that day on, I loved photography with all of my heart. But it took probably another decade before I decided I wanted to be a photographer. At that time, I was in the Isle of Man for work, and I had a brand new Canon Ixis. It was a whopping great big 2 megapixels, and I was so proud of this camera. And I drove past the beach and stopped there for my lunch, and whilst I was sitting there, I could see a rock on the shoreline, and waves kept breaking over it, but loads of waves just went over it, but the sun just broke really beautifully, and in the light, they just looked mesmerising, and I thought, oh, I just want to take a picture of that. So I went over to the rock, and I got my Canon Ixus, and I crouched down, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, until I took the perfect photo. I just knew I'd got the shot. And I stood up, and I was so elated, and I breathed again, and I realised I'd been there for an hour, just waiting for that perfect picture. And the joy of that moment absolutely changed my life, and that moment has stuck with me even till now, and it reminds me to take time to enjoy those things. And if one moment showed me that process was more important than outcome, it was that moment. So some things need to be nurtured, like the perfect photo or Brussels sprouts. And I'd like to leave you with this, that I'd encourage you to choose one thing in your life and don't rush it. That's where the joy is.